and we're still under lockdown really. The shops are going to be starting to open up again, non-essential shopping starting from next week. I've been back at work for a couple of weeks. Let me just have a look. Chat room, okay. I've been back at work for a couple of weeks, and I work in a call centre, making appointments for a kitchen company, and it's been okay for the last couple of weeks. It's better than I was expecting it to be, much better than I was expecting it to be. So I'm making commissions. They've changed the commission structure, which they do sometimes, but I'm making commissions. I'm getting appointments. People are letting us into their houses, provided we're trained. We're all trained. Everybody knows how to prevent infection spread and all that. So it looks like if this company is anything to go by, if the market for kitchens is anything to go by, it looks like things will get to normal quite quickly when we come back, when the lockdown and the self-isolation and all that's finished. It looks like there's pent-up demand. People have put things on hold, but they're not going to stop completely. It looks like, if we take this as a model, that it's going to go back to where it was pre-lockdown. I'm hoping so anyway, because I don't want to stay with masks and everything. The public transport system is now compulsory mask wearing in the UK, so I've got a 10-minute trip to work. I've got a couple of masks. I've ordered more from China. I'm not particularly happy about wearing them, but for the sake of 10 minutes, I'll do it. I'm not going to make a big issue out of it. It's pointless making a big issue out of it because it's just a thing for 10 minutes. And there's nobody ever really on this bus that I get anyway, so it's only ever me and one other person and the driver. So we're already 2 meters apart automatically because it's a reasonable sized bus with 2 people on it. So there's already social distancing. All I've got, but the mask wearing thing's official, so I've got to kind of comply with that. Otherwise, I'll get fined, and I don't want to be paying fines. It's the last thing I want to be doing. So, paid for some masks anyway. So that's kind of where my kind of ethical issues were for the week. Was do I buy masks or not? But I sat around last weekend. And press buy on a couple of mask orders from China. They'll take about a month to get here. I bought a couple in between, but that should get me through anything that I need from it'll be about this time next month that the masks arrive from China. I've got a couple, which will take care of things. It's only as I said, it's a 10-minute ride there and a 10-minute ride back. I might walk one way. Takes me about 40 minutes, 35 minutes down the hill, about 45, 50 minutes when I'm going up the hill to walk to work. But it's warm enough. It's just a matter of how the weather is, ultimately. If it's raining, I'm not going to walk. But if it's sunny, then I've got plenty of time so I can walk it. And that solves the dilemma of whether I wear a mask or not. So that's kind of where I am. I double checked this afternoon to see if my favourite vegan restaurant / coffee shop was open again, and they are, but they're only doing takeaways. So that's where we are at the moment, in my local area anyway. They've got a limited menu, 3 staff, where there used to be 8 or 9 staff, so not all on at once, but there used to be a rota with 8 or 9 staff, and now they've got 3, which is mostly the owners, people who are involved in the business on a management level and financial level are doing the cooking. But it's good to have it open again, and it's a sign that we're moving in a direction that's positive as far as I'm concerned. I'm not vegan, but I like their food and I like the people. they're genuine about what they're doing. You can tell by speaking to them, it's in their heart. They want to protect animals. They want to improve the lives of animals. They're not all that bothered about people, but they want to protect animals. And if it's genuine, then I'm going to support the business, because if I support the business, I'm doing something to help animals along the way as a byproduct. So I'm all right with that. That makes sense to me. And now I was going to spend some time talking a little bit about spiral dynamics this afternoon. I'm probably not going to do that. I might put on a YouTube video, or in this case audio, because there's a couple of good spiral dynamics short videos that I found. I haven't looked anything up yet, but it's live, so we can just do that now. And if I can find something that's about 5 or 10 minutes long, then we've got a way into me having a bit of a stream of consciousness after that. I'm all right with more or less anything this afternoon. I'm very chilled out. I had a bit of a late night because I got involved in some Rebel Wisdom channel videos and some Ken Wilber integral theory videos last night, and it was about 2:30 in the morning when I actually got to sleep. So I had a bit of a slow day, just kind of recovering from that because it's a bit late for me. Right, let's see if we can find something that's about 10 minutes long, and then I'll be happy. Right, less than 4 minutes. I don't know whether 4 minutes is enough to explain spiral dynamics. But let's give this one a try and see what it's like. This is about 3 minutes 39 seconds. And if they can manage to do spiral dynamics in 3 minutes and 39 seconds, they're doing very well. Let's see what they've got to say for themselves. This is from a channel called Optimize, and I'm just going to play it and then I'll comment on it and see where we go from there.
Hi, this is Brian with another mini chapter from A Philosopher's Notes. This one's called Spiral Dynamics. Ever heard of spiral dynamics? Here's the quick overview. People and cultures go through different stages of development. The spiral guys like to color code them to make it easier to keep track. It goes something like this. Red, think terrible twos. I'll blow you up if you piss me off. Yikes. Blue, think 10 Commandments. Fundamentalist anything. Rules are paramount. Literal interpretations of the Bible are absolutely correct. Orange, think Wall Street, academia, science, and ambition are key here. Green, think environmentalism, pluralism, all is one, non-violent. So the idea is that we evolve through these stages of development. All of those stages above are part of what they call the first tier. Here's the funny thing about those perspectives. They're all convinced they're 100% right. It's a big food fight. Green looks at orange and says, you greedy capitalists, you're good for nothing and totally destroying our planet. And my non-violent self hates you. Orange looks at green and says, you tree-hugging new agey hippies, get a job and contribute to the economy, will ya? And quit gazing at those crystals. Blue looks at everyone and says, you're all going to hell because you don't believe in insert favorite god here. And red looks at everyone and says, you don't agree with me? Fine, I'm blowing you up. Everything is either or. No one can see the validity of the other perspectives. Not so good. The ideal? Let's consciously evolve as individuals and as a culture to a second tier level of consciousness. Here, for the first time, we can hold multiple perspectives. We can see that in Ken Wilber's words, no one is smart enough to be 100% wrong. What's that look like? Well, we can see the truth in the need to take care of our environment and the need for a powerful economy and the need for rules and regulations and the need to take aggressive action when the situation demands it. Every stage has a partial truth. To embrace the whole, we need to transcend and include and start saying yes and a lot more than either or. Powerful stuff. So spiral dynamics is very cool stuff integrated into Ken Wilber's work and developed by Don Beck and Chris Cohen from the work of Claire Graves. That's a mouthful. It's also the footnote. All right, hope you enjoyed this quick look at spiral dynamics. It's a really fun way to get a quick angle on how we develop as cultures and how we might show up in our lives and how other people might show up at different stages of development at different times. So key here is we want to transcend and include as we evolve. We want to say yes and more than either or. Hope you enjoyed. Look forward to sharing more with you soon. In the meantime, have an awesome day.
There you go. That wasn't a bad attempt at spiral dynamics. It's several levels of human development going from it's like an evolutionary biology perspective, or in this case, it's consciousness levels. And it's kind of, it starts with tribal, well, survival and tribal, then shamanic or magical, then mythological perspectives, slightly less tribal. So it's variations on a theme of that until it gets to the point where it starts to it gets to kind of postmodernism and inclusivity and equal rights for everybody and all that sort of thing, all the 60s kind of stuff, the green movement, the hippie movement. That kind of deal. It covers from 100,000 years ago or 2 million years ago or wherever you want to start the beginning of the human race up to the current day. And they've got an evolutionary perspective. They believe, or they never question the belief that humanity is moving forward and evolving in consciousness. And that's probably true, but it is still a belief. I know people who don't believe that, who believe that we're just going round and round in circles. I tend to be on the evolution of consciousness side of things, but I can't tell you exactly why. It seems like it makes sense to me that there's some kind of growth going on. There's an expansion going on. There's a evolution, expression, whatever word you want to use. Anyway, so that was the very short version. There's a 10-minute version, which will probably explain it a little bit better than I can. So I'm going to play that as well now. It's going to be a little bit of a video day today. So this is from Mark Gilbert.
Do our worldviews change or evolve? If so, is there a typical developmental pattern to them? If so, what does that tell us about where we're going in the future? Hi, Mark Gilbert here, and in this brief video, we're going to answer those questions and more by covering a quick overview of the theory of spiral dynamics, one of the most useful tools that I have come across for understanding the personal and cultural evolution of humanity, and one that I found is not well known in the mainstream. At the outset, let me say that to fully grasp the depth of this theory, it would take much longer, days or weeks, than this brief introduction can get into. But I think you can understand the essential concepts in just a few minutes. However, I would recommend that you've watched the video on worldviews in connection with this one. Spiral dynamics comes from the work of social scientist Claire Graves in the 1970s. For decades before, he had been researching the value systems of individuals. Now, a value system is simply a set of values that a person or a group holds that ethically guides their decisions and behavior. It also plays a part in establishing their identity as a person or group. People like me act this way and think this way. kind of thing. Graves' research over years showed that following the same people, that their values changed as their lives changed, and that everyone tended to move through the same consistent set of values. In other words, as children, we all start out with the same set of values, but as we master those life conditions as a child, a second set of values emerges to guide us in our lives as our new world conditions evolve, and then another set of values, and so on and so on. Graves first published his work in Futures magazine in the 1970s, but it was only later with the assistance of Don Beck and Chris Cowan in the book Spiral Dynamics in the 1990s that the theory became more into the public light. And at that time, they also added color codes for the value levels. The name Spiral Dynamics was created. Now, to simplify the theory a bit, let's consider that the value systems described in Spiral Dynamics are really the same as the worldviews we discussed in that video. So what this theory is suggesting to us is that we as humans all evolve through a common path of the same consistent sequence of worldviews. This sequence can be seen as applying to the life of one individual who's born on the planet. As mentioned, one from birth starts at the very first viewpoint, and as they grow and develop and as their lives around them change, the next viewpoint emerges to guide them, and then the next, and the next, leading into adulthood. They typically tend to settle into one worldview, which guides their lives the most. Although one can continue to evolve into further higher worldviews in the sequence as an adult, there is a greater tendency to settle into one and simply stay there. However, we can also see the groups of people, cultures, societies, since they're made up of individuals with various worldviews, that they go through the same sequence as individuals. And as they feed off one another and our desire to fit in, think about Maslow's level of social needs, we can begin to see how and why certain groups tend to think alike. Yet these groups can live side by side in modern life and see and think differently, leading us to understand just a little bit about the culture wars that we see. Finally, this developmental sequence of worldviews can be seen from an historical perspective, going back to the origin of humanity, where the earlier worldviews were prevalent, and as we evolved as a species, more and newer worldviews emerged to meet newer human needs. In this regard, we can see that some worldviews only came about in the recent past, and new ones are still being birthed as humanity develops. So what is the sequence of these common worldviews? Spiral dynamics maps a system of 9 or more levels of consciousness or worldviews through which humans move in order. For ease in describing the levels, as mentioned, they're color-coded, although the colors of the sun have no particular significance. These levels alternate between a focus on the external world and attempts to change it, and a focus on our inner world and attempts to come to peace with it. When charted, the pattern of evolutionary consciousness represents or resembles a spiral. New life conditions bring new levels of thinking, which bring new life conditions in an ever-repeating upward pattern. Consider first early man, who was faced with basic conditions of basic survival. This base survival sense level of existence gave rise to a worldview related to purely meeting biological needs. We became aware that we were distinct selves, began to sense cause and effect on the outer world, and developed heightened sensory abilities to simply survive in that world. However, as we began to meet those needs, we sensed a desire to foster group support, to support meeting our challenges in life. Hence, there arose the second, or purple, kin spirits level of existence, where we formed tribes to create safety and security. Here there emerged the belief in mystical spirits in nature, a seasonal sense of time, and the development of myth and tradition. However, as needs were met at this level, the security of the tribe was disrupted eventually by the emergence of the personal ego, and the sense that the self was more powerful than the tribe. This third, or red, or power god's level of existence brought forth our power impulses. Might is right, a spontaneous, guilt-free, daring nature, the desire for immediate gratification, and a lack of concern for consequences. Historically, these were the powerful warlords creating the system of those in power and those who submitted to power. Yet as our needs at this level were met, we began to reflect upon the unfairness of this system of haves and have-nots. This gave search to the belief that there are forces guiding our destiny, and a need to understand the underlying rules of life, giving rise to the fourth, or blue, truth force level of existence. Here we find a desire for meaning and purpose, a sacrifice now for rewards later, order and rules, and a need to control our impulses, causing our newly found guilt. Historically, this level gave rise to major religions or systems of laws and so on. However, as the needs at this level were met, we began to question the cost we paid and the loss of individual freedom due to absolutist rules. In the fifth, or orange, strive-drive level of existence, we began to question these rules, authority, and the delayed gratification of our needs. We began to strive to conquer the world, unlock its secrets, and achieve personal material success. We sought pleasure in the life now, not in the future. This level saw rise to goal planning, economic competition, and the pursuit of scientific truths. But alas, our material success didn't give us the happiness we did, and we began to turn inward to find our truth. The sixth, or green level, or human bond level of existence, saw us begun to seek consensus for decisions, pursue humanitarian efforts, and display a tolerance of personal differences. We sought harmony through belonging, acceptance, community, unity, and an understanding of our inner nature. It's important to note that these six first-tier levels are characterized by the fact that if you look at life through one of them, you don't recognize there's other valid ways of looking at life. We can see this playing out in the world today as the various religious fundamentalists, blue, have conflict with one another over whose truth, order, and God is the right one. We begin to understand why popular books written by scientists at the orange level are driven to deny that God, or more accurately, God at the blue level, exists. We start to understand why often well-intentioned humanitarians who were living at the green level assist, and they desire to assist the conditions in third world countries, see their work as confiscated by local leaders at the red level who have not developed the conscious and rules that come at the higher blue system. Ironically, it's thought that maybe these chaotic life conditions of a modern world, where all these viewpoints are competing and battling for control, they might contribute to the next stages that have been emerging in human consciousness. These next levels are considered within spiral dynamics as a great leap to what's called second-tier consciousness. And at the heart of what marks this evolutionary leap is the realization that this developmental path of worldviews exists, and why we don't always see and make choices from the same perspectives. In other words, we became aware of this spiral and how it impacts us, and that's what pushes us to the second tier. At the second tier levels of yellow, called flex flow, and turquoise, called global view, and the continuous emergence of still higher levels of potential, spiral dynamics shows that we begin to understand the big picture view of living systems and the evolutionary flow of life, where chaos and change are just a natural part. We begin to see the role that we each play in our own evolution. We begin to honor and respect others' beliefs and worldviews without necessarily agreeing with them. We acknowledge the connection between spirituality and physics. We focus on and see the good in all living entities. We expand our use of brain and mind tools for developing consciousness. We see the individual self as part of a larger, conscious, spiritual whole that also serves the self. And we value the spiritual beliefs of all the other levels as we stand in awe of this overall cosmic order. As we step back from the model of spiral dynamics for a moment, we can see that it offers us an evolutionary path, our value systems or worldviews, one similar to Maslow's hierarchy in relation to our needs, and that this path tends to move from what we might call human to what we might see as spiritual. More on spiral dynamics in a later video. Until next time.
All right, so that's from the Mark Gilbert channel. It's a video called What is Spiral Dynamics? I think he broke it down quite nicely, better than I could have done it in 10 minutes without a lot of rehearsal and a lot of conversations first. I haven't had that much time for research, so I'm not going to claim to know very much about it, but I'm interested in the parallels between Maslow's hierarchy of needs and spiral dynamics, and between spiral dynamics and integral theory, which is Ken Wilber's work. which I first came across about 20 years ago, with a book called Spectrums of Consciousness, which I didn't read, but I scanned, and he's got lots of lists. Ken Wilber likes his lists and his models, and he's got a 4-quadrant model that he uses to look at everything. That's got individual internal, individual external, so subjective internal, then the second person in the conversation perspective, which is the second quadrant. Then there's a group quadrant for society, and my brain's gone soggy, so I can't remember what the fourth one is, but you can look it up. It's integral theory is the name of the thing that he does. And Doc Lenny Times just arrived in chat, so I don't know whether he's listening, but he could well be. So hiya, Doc. Enjoyed your conversation with Mona last night. It was very, very chilled out and very entertaining in your own specific kind of way. It's good though. So spiral dynamics, integral theory, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs are all things that I'm looking into. I'm not going to claim to know anything about anything really, but I'm happy to research and just talk about stuff that I'm researching. As I said, I got caught up in some Ken Wilber videos last night and this morning, but then I've kind of tired myself out with him, because he tends to say the same thing in slightly different ways repeatedly. He's got a 10-minute summary which he uses on every single video, with the same examples of integral kind of being. The example he uses is atoms moving into molecules, molecules moving into cells, cells moving into organs, organs becoming the body. So that's what they mean by integral, is like one level extends the previous level but includes it. And it's a nice idea. It's a nice idea to work with. And the framework gets very complicated though. It becomes a framework that I might use to critique stuff when I get familiar with it, because it's got a good basis for critiquing, like media stuff, media culture wars, that kind of thing. It's referring back to integral theory would give me a way of critiquing what's going on in terms of media and politics and international relations and stuff like that. But I'm not familiar enough with it yet. After like three days of research, I'm not familiar enough. I'm going to have to buy Spectrums of Consciousness again to make any sense of it, because I need it in front of me with writing and diagrams. And trying to pull stuff off the internet is fine. It's for shorthand, but for me, I need a book. I need a book in front of me. Yeah, it's Changes of Scale, Doc. That's exactly what it is. I quite like it. I'm attracted to it, and I'm attracted to kind of Ken Wilber as a person. He's a very kind of interesting way of delivering things. There's nothing forceful about what he's doing. It's very considered. It's very introspective, and it's a good way of approaching. I think my brain tells me, my brain tells me it's a good way for me, a good direction for me to go at the moment. But I've got to try and find somebody to talk me through the details of it without actually paying any money for anything. I'm not familiar with the maths part of that, but integration is one of my keywords for the last 3 months. So to me, integral theory is part of integration. It's part of putting. I'm a systems man. I like big systems diagram type stuff. I like systems analysis. I was trained in systems analysis about 35 years ago when I was at college, when I was like 19. I've never really got to use it, but it kind of informs where I go to look for my research. If I find something that's got a good systems analysis basis to it, that's where I gravitate to. And we used to do tree diagrams with boxes on them. And I still do mind maps now. I do mind maps. I found a thing called Orbit Mind, which is an app for Android, which I'm going to be using. But it's circles. It's like circles within circles within circles, different levels of detail for things. So I'm going to be playing with that because I like that kind of idea for a mind map as well. It gives it more of like a structure rather than being an unstructured collection of things that are linked but not with any particular order to them. There's a little bit more order in Orbit Mind. And my framework in my head is a globe. It's a sphere with me in the center, and just a relationship to all the things 360 degrees round and 360 degrees round horizontal and 360 degrees round vertically, and obviously the in-between angles as well. So I'm trying to put a framework together within that, and I don't know whether I'll be able to adapt spiral dynamics and the Ken Wilber material into that, but I'm going to have a look and see if it's something that I can adapt. And if it's not, it's not. I'll have learned something along the way anyway. It's all kind of experimental. I don't really mind whether things work or not, as long as I'm experimenting and having a good time in the process. That's kind of the way I'm doing things at the moment. I'm working 5 days a week, so I've only got really Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday to do anything creative at all. So I'm too tired during the week to do anything at the moment. And the fact that I went to sleep late last night doesn't really help, because it means that I've been sluggish and kind of not as enthusiastic today as I would normally be. But then I got quite a lot of stuff. I absorbed quite a lot of stuff last night, but then I've forgotten it. Just one of those things. But anyway, we'll just see where the Ken Wilber stuff goes. I'm going to see if I can find a 5-minute summary of integral theory, just so I can give you the unofficial version. I don't think there is one, but let's have a look. This is from YouTube, if I find anything. Search integral. Everything seems to be about 3 hours long. The shortest I found last night was about 40 minutes. So 13 minutes comes up here, so that might work. Let's try that. I'll give you the first couple of minutes of that one and see what we do. See how it feels. This is a TEDx talk by Tony Lilios. It's called Integral Theory and the Path to Growth Beyond Goals. And I haven't listened to it before, but it's about the length that I'm looking for as an explanation. So in theory, we'll take the first couple of minutes, and if it sounds reasonable, I'll dip in and out of it.
9 years ago, I was asked a very simple question. Do you believe your best days lie ahead of you or behind you? At that time, our company that created the market for mobile phone hard cases was one of the fastest growing private companies in the U.S. We had an
No, I don't think that one's going to work for me. He just seems to want to talk about what he's doing. There's no mention of anything that I'm interested in there so far. I might not be giving him any benefit of the doubt in 34 seconds, but right, here's one that's 6 minutes long, so let's try this. This is David Long, I Am, and it's 5 minutes and 56 seconds. I'm just going to let this play because that's about the time scale we've got.
What's up? I am David Long. I'm here to talk to you today about integral theory, and I'm going to try and move quick. Right now, we live in a time we have all the world's knowledge at our fingertips. All of these different cultures and these different traditions, they all have a part of the truth. And so what integral is trying to do is trying to put these ideas into some kind of context where we can see their value, but also their limits. And so an integral view is going to be a way of integrating diversity with discernment. What a lot of people wind up doing, which is not good integration, is they wind up integrating a bunch of diversity, but the discernment isn't good. And so they wind up with a map of their own preferences as opposed to a map of our shared reality. So that's why the discernment part of it is really important, to be able to really integrate this diversity in a way that is honoring the truth, but also the limits of each of these perspectives. So it tries to do this by having sort of a checklist kind of approach, and it encourages you to look through all of these different lenses to try to get the most complete perspective on a thing possible. Its 5 basic lenses are interested in philosophy and understanding human disciplines, as well as psychology and understanding the aspects of what's going on within a person. So some of these parts that are psychological are things like personality types. And there's a bunch of personality type systems, like Briggs-Myers, the Enneagram, etc. But there's also lines of development, like individual skills, like cooking or playing guitar, things like that. There's also states, which are like waking, dream, deep sleep, or altered states, like if you take psychedelic drugs, or non-dual states, where you plunge into meditative states that alter your perception of reality. So that's what we call horizontal states. But there's also vertical stages of cognitive development. And this is like a spectrum of ideas and human potentials. There's a really good introduction to spiral dynamics that I'm going to make available here. And that's a pretty good intro into what the different stages are. And then I'm going to make another video available down here, which is kind of talking about misconceptions and things like that. Watch this one first and then watch this one. And then I think you'll have a pretty good idea about what's going on with the stages. The problem with stages is that they are majorly neglected. A lot of people don't talk about them, and so out of all the aspects of this map, they might be the one thing that people are the least familiar with. Or they'll talk about childhood development, but they don't talk about adult stages of development. And the part of it that's philosophy actually includes these different lines because the lines are human disciplines. You have this picture right here, which is a map of what we call the quadrants. And this includes interiority and exteriority. So like my consciousness, subjectivity, and the interpersonal realm of meaning, that's the interiors, versus the exteriors are like things and systems, like how the parts relate to the whole, like tangible exterior reality. And then there's different disciplines and different approaches to knowledge that happen within each of these different quadrants. And so integral is trying to be like, you can't reduce everything to empiricism, you can't reduce everything to phenomenology, you can't reduce everything to structuralism, you can't reduce everything to systems theory. We have to see what all of these disciplines are bringing to the table and have a complete holistic view. And that is the real goal of integral theory, is to have the most complete map of reality possible. And maybe we'll never have a totally full map of what's going on, but we can touch on all the basic aspects, and that can give us a way to kind of dig in further. The way that they talk about it is like a cognitive operating system on which you can run all of these different programs and they work with each other instead of more old school cognitive operating systems like Christianity or something like that, that's really got a strict set of symbols and they don't work well with others. Integral theory is about putting everything in context and understanding the parts and how they relate to the whole in a very Western Enlightenment kind of way, but also including Eastern Enlightenment realizations. So the good thing about having this integral perspective is that it actually applies to every human discipline as well. There's integral leadership, integral business, integral marketing, integral art. And these integral practitioners are seeing more of the reality and taking into account more perspectives than the previous reductionist views that most people have taken. That's a pretty good intro into what it's about. You should definitely look into it more. Check out the videos I've provided.
Right, that's enough of that man. That was David Long. It's from the channel called I Am David Long. He did a reasonable job of it. I'm trying to find a short video with Ken Wilber. Let's try the first 5 minutes of this. This is I'm about 10 minutes into this video, but with Ken Wilber, he tends to give you good solid chunks of approach information. It's like how to think about things rather than what to think. I know they've got a big complex map of stuff from psychology and philosophy and evolutionary biology and all that, but I'm more interested in how he thinks rather than what he's thinking about. So I'm just going to play a little bit of Ken Wilber himself, because it's easier to get a feel for it if you know the perspective and the process he's going through. And I'm hoping this is going to give people a bit of a feel for that.
Two fundamental types of spiritual or religious engagements widely present in the world today. And for the moment, I'm using spiritual and religious as generally synonymous. We'll separate them in a minute. The first type of spirituality is a kind of narrative, often mythic in nature, that purports to explain the origin and meaning of the world, usually at the hand of some creator, god, or goddess figure. On an individual level, its purpose is usually to provide some sort of meaning, value, or purpose in life. And on a collective level, its purpose is generally to provide social and cultural cohesion. Usually part of this narrative is a notion of salvation or redemption, the idea that humanity is caught in some sort of original sin or primary misdoing or fundamental ignorance and has to confess, repent, awaken, enlighten, or reorder its life towards a love and service of this groundless ground and its righteous order. And sometime, through the vehicle of this God's one and only primary prophet, or messenger, or even son, who is usually the founder of this particular school of religion. The effect of this narrative spirituality is to make this life, the life right now, here on earth, essentially a testing ground, a trial. The here and now is not the real reality. It's just a thin test run to see if you can follow all the God-given rules, laws, and commandments. You are primarily to put off any real satisfaction for now. Postpone all of that and get your real reward and real life in the world to come. If you follow all the commandments, Obey all the God-given rules and covenants if you live a basically simple.
All right, it's just describing religion in general terms with that, but that gives you an idea of how he thinks. It's quite detailed, but without, I don't know how much personal experience he's got about all the things he's talking about. He's got some personal experience, but I don't know how much depth there is. And it's interesting to think about it. I've done some kind of experiments with integrating philosophy over a long period of time, trying to move through the philosophical viewpoints from one to the next, from pre-Socratic to Stoicism, through Plato, through Neoplatonism, into the Enlightenment philosophies, and then through to a little bit of postmodernism. I never really got on with postmodernism, but I never really got on with science either. So in some ways, it's easier to integrate the older philosophical ideas because they're broader. The detail of the modern approach to philosophy does my head in a bit, but for me, it's much more about looking for a creator, God kind of definition, a concept of God. That's kind of what I'm looking for with the philosophy that I do. And you can usually, if you've got a concept of God, you're projecting yourself into it. So it tells you who you are by how you define God. But most people don't realize that's what they're doing. But it is interesting, and it is kind of a way of seeing yourself. It's just to sit down and define God or define the ultimate reality. Reality is another way of seeing God, basically, without actually saying it. So it includes people who don't have a specific definition of God. That's the definition. That's the word we use in philosophy groups in Newcastle is reality, to mean 100,000 different things in various combinations and various contexts. Nobody ever really knows what anybody means by the word reality in the groups that I go to. They go around in circles endlessly, and we talk about reality without ever defining it, and we talk about other concepts without really defining them. But it's building relationships between people in groups, and that's part of what the groups are for. So I haven't really got an agenda today. I'm just kind of rambling and playing videos. I know there's about 10 minutes left, so we don't get a break until about 57. So I've got about 6 or 7 minutes. I'm going to play a little bit more Ken Wilber, just because that's what I'm into at the moment. So this is a video called Why Wake Up. The whole video is 24 minutes long, but I'm just going to play the first 5 minutes of it, just to give you a feel of who Ken Wilber is if you don't know who he is. You'll get an idea by just listening to the tone of his voice.
Asking the question, well, why do it? Why wake up? And in saying that, you kind of gave all the reasons why not to. Like, it's a very painful process. And I'm wondering if you could expand on the pain of waking up. And then also, is it related to the typical kind of gap of nihilism between first tier and second tier consciousness? Is it somewhat the same, or are they different things, in your opinion?
Well, it's very common in the mystical traditions to, again, talk about your relative, small, conventional, finite self, and then your real self, the true self, the real seer or witness, or your true Christ consciousness, not your individual self. And that individual self has to more or less literally die. And that's the way the traditions talk about it, is it's a death, and you have to die. And so the saying is, if you die before you die, then when you die, you won't die. And that's what mystical awakening does. When you die with a separate, isolated self, which is usually called the ego, but when you die to that separate self, you're introduced into this timeless awareness. And it's called timeless because it simply embraces past, present, and future. And this is something that's happening anyway. And I'll explain that in just a moment. But this whole notion about there being a timeless now, which is what eternity means. Eternity doesn't mean a really, really, really long time. That's how people often take it, but that's not what it means. Eternity means a moment without time. So it's a pure, timeless present or timeless now. And even Ludwig Wittgenstein, Mr. Logical Positivism, he nailed it, and it's a perfect explanation. This is a direct quote from Wittgenstein. If we take eternity to mean not everlasting temporal duration, but a moment without time, then eternal life belongs to those who live in the present. So that's where you get that cliche, be here now. So here means infinity. Same with infinity as with eternity. Infinity is not a big space. It's a point without space. So 100% of infinity is right here, all of it. And eternity doesn't mean stretching out forever. It means all of eternity, 100% of it is right now, all of it. So be here now is the sort of cliche for what you have to do to be in life. But the reason that this timeless now is an ever-present reality is that's all we're actually ever experiencing. And that's why all these traditions maintain that this separate self is actually an illusion. It's not really there. And that's the first thing you realize when you wake up to this true self. But the reason that our typical temporal stream is illusory is we never actually experience it. So you can think about anything you want to from the past right now. Just get a good image of it in your mind. And notice that you're not actually experiencing the past. That image exists right now. And that's all you're experiencing. And when it actually happened, it was right now. And the same with the future. You think about anything you want to in the future. All you're doing is you're having a present thought right now. And if that actually happens in the future, it'll be right now. The only thing you're ever aware of is right now. So all you're ever aware of is the timeless now. And so that's why even trying to just be aware of the passing present, like I won't think of yesterday, I won't think about just the passing present. Most traditions will tell you it's a waste of time. So it's just waking up to this realization that it's an ever-present reality, that you are always living in this timeless now, and be here now in space is infinity. But you get caught up in this illusory stream of time. You're always thinking about something you did wrong yesterday, always worrying about something you're going to do wrong tomorrow. So you're always facing anxiety and fear and depression, and that's the whole human condition. But we have identified with that so strongly, and we take this separate self to be so real, even though it's not any more real than actually experiencing the past or the future. We have
Right, so that's from a channel called Future Thinkers. The video is called Why Wake Up, and you're listening to Ken Wilber. You're listening to Revolution Radio. This is a show called Free Association. Revolution Radio is listener supported, so if you feel like supporting the channel to keep the servers running, you can find us at revolution.radio. There's a Patreon button there, or you can make a donation. Anything you can give us will help. Nobody gets a salary. We're all volunteers.